That summer, I decided to take a part-time job at the local Carnival, a well-known event in the small town where I lived. For many people, this carnival was just an occasion to have fun and enjoy junk food. But for me, it was an opportunity to earn some extra pocket money. This year's carnival had a rather bizarre theme: horror games, featuring many exciting games and thrilling attractions. I was assigned to work at the haunted house, a large, dark structure with moss-covered walls and dim lighting. It was said that this house once belonged to a wealthy family, but it was later abandoned due to a dark legend. Locals claimed that the spirits of that family still wandered within the house, searching for those who dared to trespass on their territory. On my first night of work, the atmosphere was truly strange. I stood at the entrance of the house, welcoming guests with a smile on my face, but inside I felt an unsettling sense of anxiety. Everyone was laughing and joking, but I sensed that something was off. As I observed the visitors, I noticed that a few had gone in, but had not come out. At first I thought I was imagining things, but that feeling continued to cling to me. One evening, while I was on duty, a beautiful girl walked in, her eyes sparkling under the flickering lights. Her name was Alice, and we started chatting. She was very enthusiastic and seemed completely unafraid. I found myself interested in her, but part of me felt anxious as I watched her gaze sweep over the dark walls of the house. She said she wanted to explore, and all I could do was nod, not wanting to hinder her curiosity. As I watched the visitors come in and out, the numbers just didn't add up. Each time a group entered, I noticed there were fewer people when they came out. I decided to investigate a bit, and when I stepped inside, I heard whispers, as if someone was having a conversation. I called out Alice's name, but there was no response. The thrill of anxiety rose as I realized that I might have lost track of her. I continued searching, and when I reached a dark room, I felt a chill run down my spine. From a shadowy corner, there was a glimmer of light, and I followed it. It was an old mirror, but unlike any mirror I had ever seen. The glass reflected my image, but in it, I saw a figure standing behind me. Terrified, I turned around, but there was no one there. Back outside, I saw another group of guests entering the house, but once again, the numbers didn't add up. I noticed several people going in, but I didn't see them coming out. An uneasy feeling settled in my stomach, and I decided to check again. This time, I couldn't find any sign of Alice at all. After a while, an elderly man stepped into the haunted house. He appeared strange, with an unsettling look that I couldn't quite explain. He glanced around as if searching for something. I started to feel anxious and uncomfortable, but I couldn't leave my post. As he moved closer, I heard a whisper from behind me.
"Come back."
A soft but clear voice echoed. I couldn't pinpoint the source of the sound, but I felt as if someone was watching me from behind. Determined not to let myself panic, I moved forward to check my surroundings. However, as I entered another room, I felt the presence of a dark figure. I couldn't see it clearly, but I knew it was there. I called out loudly, but only received an echo in return. In a moment of panic, I decided to run outside to search for Alice. But when I turned back, the door slammed shut. I tried to open it, but it was locked tight. I had no idea who had done this, but a wave of fear washed over me. Everything turned chaotic as I heard a giggle echoing from deep within the house. I rushed into another room and was immediately slammed against a cold wall. Something damp touched my face, and I turned around with a panicked gaze. It was a figure with glowing, bright eyes staring back at me. My girl, it mumbled, and I felt myself being engulfed in darkness. The world around me began to spin, and I couldn't comprehend what was happening. I tried to find a way out, but every time I attempted to open a door, something blocked my path. The laughter echoed again, and a whispering voice said,
Don't leave.
I felt panic rising within me, but a part of me still refused to give up. I began to shout Alice's name, hoping she would hear me. Finally, I decided to confront my fears. I slammed my fist against the door, and miraculously, it swung open. I bolted outside, racing straight toward the exit. As I stepped into the light, I saw Alice standing there, a bewildered look on her face.
I've been looking for you.
She said, and I felt a rush of fresh air flooding over me. But everything was not as it seemed. When I turned back to look at the haunted house, I saw that dark figure standing in the window, its bright, furious eyes locked onto mine. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The girl I had encountered in the haunted house, I now realized, was not an ordinary person. Run, I shouted to Alice, and we sprinted toward the festival. As we got closer to the entrance, the bright lights of the carnival made me feel safer. Finally, when I looked back, I saw that the dark figure had vanished. That night left an unforgettable memory in me. From then on, I never returned to that festival again, knowing that some secrets were meant to remain undiscovered. Every summer, my small town comes alive with the lights of the local festival, where people from all around gather to have fun and enjoy delicious snacks. I have always loved this lively atmosphere, the excitement spreading from the games to the art performances. However, during one particular festival season, I would discover that not everything is as bright as it seems. That summer when I was 12, the festival had a theme of nightmare, featuring spooky games and a standout haunted house. The atmosphere of this festival was strange, but I couldn't resist the curiosity. I invited my best friend, Tom, to join me. We eagerly walked to the festival, the fresh air and laughter echoing all around us. Upon arrival, we quickly purchased our entrance tickets and immersed ourselves in the crowd. The fun games, lively sounds, and delicious aroma of popcorn made me forget all my worries. However, a sense of unease lingered in my heart as I noticed the bizarre images hanging around the game booths. Something felt off, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. We began to try our luck at the games, and as the laughter echoed around us, I felt more at ease. However, as the sky darkened, I noticed a heavy black curtain descending over the festival. The flickering lights began to dim, and the atmosphere grew thick and oppressive. After playing a few games, we decided to try the haunted house. I've heard there are really strange things inside, Tom said, a delighted smile on his face. I felt a rush of excitement and couldn't wait any longer. We stepped inside, and the door of the house slammed shut behind us, leaving us in darkness. Inside, everything was chaotic and disordered. Laughter, screams, and strange sounds blended together. I felt as if I had wandered into a never-ending dream. But as we moved deeper inside, I sensed something else. It felt as though someone was watching us, ... Do you hear the whispers? I asked Tom, but he just shook his head. It might just be an echo, but I couldn't shake off this strange feeling. I turned around and saw a shadowy figure standing in the corner of the room. When I looked again, the figure vanished like smoke. "Come on!" I shouted. But as we moved faster, I felt a chilling breeze sweep through, making the hairs on my neck stand up. Tom and I searched for an exit, but it seemed like everything was changing. The rooms appeared to be shifting, and we were trapped in a maze of darkness. As we entered another room, I saw a large mirror. The dim light reflected our images, but the strange thing was that in the mirror, I saw a figure standing behind me. My heart raced, and I turned around, but there was no one there.
Is something wrong?
Tom asked, but I could only shake my head, unsure of what to say. Leaving that room, we desperately searched for an exit, but the eerie laughter echoed around us, heightening our anxiety. Suddenly, I heard a voice ring out.
Run, run.
A chill enveloped me, and I couldn't pinpoint where the sound was coming from. We have to go, I shouted, but at that moment, everything had descended into chaos. We felt as if someone was watching us from behind. When I turned to look, I saw a figure emerge, grinning eerily. Without thinking, we bolted out of the haunted house. As we stepped out into the light, I glanced back and saw the figure standing at the door, its eyes glowing intensely. Tom and I breathed a sigh of relief, but the atmosphere was still heavy. "Let's go," I said, and we ran away from the haunted house. But when we returned to the fairgrounds, everything seemed to have changed. The bright, shining lights now appeared as if they were eyes watching us. I couldn't believe my eyes as I saw festival goers transformed into ghostly figures gliding through the air.
What is happening?
Tom asked, his expression one of panic. We ran back to the exit, but it felt like everything was blocked. The pathways were locked, and I felt as if we were trapped in a nightmare. Suddenly, a voice rang out from behind us.
Run, run.
As we turned to see a group of ghosts advancing towards us, I felt a surge of terror. "Come on, let's go," I shouted, pulling Tom along. We had no idea where to run, just desperately trying to escape the vague threat looming behind us. The laughter and festivities of the fair seemed to fade into a haunting silence, replaced by the eerie whispers of the apparitions. Eventually, we found a small door in the dark corner. I opened it and we burst outside. At that moment, the atmosphere around us felt lighter, but there was still an unsettling sensation lingering in the air. We returned to the fair, but the joyful vibe had completely vanished. The bright lights now felt dim, and the laughter that once filled the air was replaced by an unsettling silence, making us realize that we had crossed into something far more sinister than we had ever imagined. I looked around and could no longer see the familiar faces of friends, only the wandering shadows of ghosts. I realized that there are things in life that cannot be explained and secrets that we should never explore. We ran toward the light of the crowd, and as we exited the gate, I glanced back one last time to see that figure grinning malevolently. From that point on, I never returned to that festival again. The memories of that terrifying night changed me forever. I learned that not everything that glitters is gold, and sometimes curiosity can lead to frightening outcomes. Festivals are usually a time of joy, but for me, it became an unforgettable memory. When I was around 12 years old, my small town hosted a vibrant summer festival where people gathered to enjoy food, play games, and soak in the lively atmosphere. However, deep down, I always felt a sense of unease whenever I got close to the festival. That year, the festival took place at the end of August, and the excitement in the air seemed to uplift everyone around me. My friends, including Alice, who I was very close to, decided that we would go to the festival together. Although I felt a bit anxious, I couldn't turn down their invitation. As we arrived at the festival, the sight was magnificent. Bright lights, lively music echoing everywhere. We strolled through the stalls, trying delicious street food like cotton candy and fried potatoes. But as soon as we approached the haunted house, a strange feeling washed over me. The house was decorated with eerie symbols, and strange sounds resonated from inside, as if calling out to the brave to step inside.
Should we go in?
Alice asked, her eyes filled with curiosity. I hesitated, but eventually agreed. As we stepped inside, the air instantly became cold. The laughter and screams from outside faded away. Instead, we could only hear heavy breathing and faint whispers. Inside, everything was dark and suffocating. We moved through rooms adorned with bizarre images and distorted mirrors. Suddenly, a cold draft swept through, sending chills down my spine. "Is anyone here?" I called out, but there was no response. As we continued deeper into the house, I noticed that Alice had disappeared. "Alice, where are you?" I called out, my voice echoing in the empty space. Confusion set in, and fear began to rise. Just as I turned around, I saw a figure standing in the dark corner, and I immediately felt a chill run down my spine. The figure approached, and I recognized it as an elderly woman with a mysterious expression.
"You shouldn't be here,"
she said in a gentle yet authoritative tone. I wanted to ask her about Alice, but a strange feeling held me back from speaking. "Who are you?" I asked, but she only smiled and pointed to another door.
"Go inside. She's waiting for you."
Inside was a dark room filled with large mirrors reflecting distorted images of myself. The cold atmosphere sent shivers down my spine. Suddenly, a whisper echoed in my ear.
"She's here."
I turned around, but there was no one in sight. Time passed, and I felt as if I were trapped in a nightmare. Every time I tried to find an exit, the walls seemed to shift, making it impossible to escape. I ran in desperation, but all I could see were the strange images reflected in the mirrors, as if they were watching me. Finally, I found another exit. As I stepped out, I saw the woman standing there, staring at me.
"Have you found her?"
She asked, and I felt a chilling sensation as I realized she knew more than I thought. "No, I haven't seen Alice," I replied, my voice trembling. She chuckled softly.
"She will never leave here. She is a part of this place."
I felt a chill run down my spine. "You can't keep her," I yelled and bolted out of the haunted house. When I got outside, everything had changed. The festival lights were off, and no one was there. A chilling sensation enveloped me, and I felt as if something was lurking. I quickly ran toward the exit gates, but no one stopped me. I just wanted to escape this place. As I reached the exit gate, a strong gust of wind blew through, and I turned back to look. The woman was still standing there, her gaze seemingly tracking my every step.
"Remember, she will always be here."
She whispered. I didn't want to look back anymore, so I hurriedly stepped out of the festival, my heart filled with confusion. In the following days, I couldn't sleep. The images of a haunted house and that woman haunted me. I decided to seek information about the festival and the haunted house. As I researched, I discovered that many strange events had occurred around the festival in previous years, and there were rumors that the haunted house had once been a refuge for unexplainable entities. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore and decided to return to the festival, but this time I didn't go alone. I invited a group of friends to join me and prepared for the strange things that might happen. When we arrived, the festive atmosphere returned, but the feeling of anxiety still loomed over me. We decided to enter the haunted house once again. This time, I didn't feel alone. My friends joined me as we stepped inside. As we moved through the rooms, I felt as if something was watching us. "Is anyone here?" one of my group called out, but there was no response. Suddenly, a cold wind blew through, and we heard laughter echoing from the walls. We shouldn't be here," I shouted, but my friends continued to venture deeper into the house. When we reached the last room, I saw a painting of a boy, but his eyes looked as if he was pleading for help. "Get out! Don't stay here," I shouted, but no one listened. We started to panic and ran to find an exit. When we finally found a door, I felt a rush of cold air hit us. We opened the door and saw blinding lights, but as we stepped out, the joyful atmosphere had vanished. Everyone around us looked at us with strange expressions. "What happened?" someone asked, but I couldn't answer. We quickly left the festival, but the haunting images lingered in my mind. Every time a festival was held, I would remember the haunted house and the mysterious things hidden within it. I knew there were things in the darkness that couldn't be explained, and perhaps one day, those secrets would come back to find me. Let me tell you about a strange experience I had as a child, an event I will never forget. It was on a summer evening when I was about 12 years old, during the summer festival in my small town. The lively atmosphere, with bright lights, cheerful sounds, and the aroma of fast food, always drew me in. I had gone with my best friend, Mia. We lived close to each other, so it was just a short walk to the fair. That day, the festival was crowded, and we spent hours playing games and enjoying funnel cakes and cotton candy. But as night fell, that cheerful atmosphere was overshadowed by something strange. As we were playing a ball-tossing game, I suddenly received a message from an unknown number. The first message simply read, "Hey, you look really pretty." I was confused and looked at the number. No one in my contacts had that number. I asked Mia if she knew who it might be, but she shook her head. I felt a little anxious. As we continued playing, more messages popped up. "I'm nearby. Do you want to meet me?" A shiver ran down my spine. It could just be a prank, but the feeling was unsettling. I decided not to reply, thinking that if someone wanted to talk, they could just stop messaging. Mia felt uneasy and suggested that we should leave the area, but I didn't want to make her more worried. We continued wandering around the festival, but the feeling of anxiety clung to me. Each time I looked at my phone, there was another message. "Come back here. I'm very close." I didn't want to stay there any longer. Finally, as the night deepened and we decided to head home, I saw him. A figure standing among the crowd, tall and thin, with a face that was hard to discern. As Mia and I left the festival, I felt as though someone was watching us. I told Mia, and we quickened our pace. It was dark, and as we walked home, the sounds around us faded into silence. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind us. My heart raced, and I turned to see the man still standing in the distance, staring at us. I felt like there was no way out, and my mind began to spiral into panic. "Mia, we have to go faster," I whispered, and we began to run, but there was nowhere to escape. It felt like the man was chasing us, getting closer and closer. We dashed into a dark alley, searching for any place to hide. As we entered the alley, I heard the footsteps getting closer.
Don't run. I just want to talk.
A voice called out. I froze in fear. "We're not your friends," I yelled. But I couldn't see the man's face, only his silhouette moving closer. Mia pulled my hand, and we dashed out of the alley. We reached a main street, illuminated by bright lights. But that feeling of safety lasted only a moment. The man appeared, lurking at the end of the road. "I know you're here," he yelled, and I felt a wave of fear wash over me. We started looking for a safer place, and eventually, we found a cafe that was open late. As we stepped inside, I felt as though we had escaped. We sat down and ordered drinks, still shaken from our experience. But that sense of peace didn't last long. As we sat in the cafe, I spotted the man standing outside, staring through the window. He didn't leave. He just stood there, his eyes unblinking, fixed on me. I saw Mia start to tremble, and the fear within me surged again. "We have to call the police," I said, but when I pulled out my phone, there was no signal. A sense of despair engulfed me. He moved closer, and we knew there was no time left to escape.
He's going to come in here.
Mia shouted, and we stood up, running toward the door. But just as we got close, the man was standing in the way. "I just want to talk." He laughed, but his smile was anything but friendly. We turned and bolted out of the cafe. "Run!" I shouted, and we sprinted toward the main road. The sound of his footsteps echoed behind us. He was chasing after us. We dashed through the streets, but we couldn't find anywhere safe. Finally, as we reached a crowded residential area, I spotted the flashing lights of a police car in the distance. "We have to get there," I said, and we kept running. As we approached, I waved my arms and shouted, "Help us!" The officer spotted us and quickly rushed over. "What's going on?" they asked, and I pointed to the man standing in the distance. "He's been following us," I said, my breath still panting. They turned to look and ordered the man to stop. He seemed surprised but did not run away. Instead, he stood there, a smile on his face. Finally, the police arrested him. They asked us about the incident, and I recounted everything. As we returned home, the feeling of safety began to return, but the memory of that night would haunt me forever. What happened afterward was an explanation of the events that had unfolded. The man was charged with harassment and stalking. The festival we once loved had turned into a terrifying memory. I decided never to attend the festival again. The memory of that man and his frightening gaze would forever be etched in my mind. When I was a child, I used to be very fond of the lively atmosphere of festivals. The colorful lights, the cheerful music, and the exciting games always made me feel excited and eager. However, there is a terrifying memory that forever changed that love. This story begins on a summer evening, when I was about 12 years old. My small town held a festival at the end of July, and that lively atmosphere attracted people from all around. I, along with my close friends, Max and Sarah, had planned to attend the festival. When we arrived, the atmosphere was vibrant with laughter and the aroma of snacks wafting everywhere. "Let's try the ring toss first," Max suggested, his face beaming with excitement.
"And we have to get cotton candy too,"
Sarah added, her eyes sparkling as she spotted the booth. After having fun for a while, we spent time at various games, from ring toss to shooting booths. The feeling of triumph whenever we won a prize was exhilarating, but as the sky began to darken, I sensed that something was off. As I strolled around the festival, I suddenly spotted a haunted house tucked away in a corner of the grounds. The house looked peculiar, with its black painted walls, a tightly shut door, and strange noises emanating from within.
"Should we give it a try?"
Sarah asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "I'm not sure. It looks kind of strange," I replied, feeling a wave of anxiety rising within me.
"Come on, it's just a game!"
Max laughed as he pulled me toward the door. Reluctantly, I agreed to step inside, even though a part of me was filled with unease. As we entered, a chilling atmosphere enveloped us immediately. The sounds from outside seemed to vanish, leaving only the heavy breaths and strange whispers echoing from the darkened rooms. Each of our footsteps echoed in the silence, and the distorted mirrors reflected our images in unsettling ways, making me feel as though someone was watching us. "Is anyone here?" I called out, but there was no response. Suddenly, a laughter echoed from somewhere within the house. My heart raced, and I turned to look for Max and Sarah. But as I turned around, I saw a figure standing in the doorway. Frail old woman with a chilling gaze. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her tone serious, sending a wave of unease through me. "We're just exploring," I protested, but she didn't relent. She pointed toward a dark room. "She won't come back," she continued, making me feel as if I were trapped in a nightmare. The air grew heavy around us, and I could sense the darkness creeping in, suffocating my courage. As I turned around, I heard my name being called. Max and Sarah were rushing toward me. "Run!" Sarah shouted, and without needing to ask why, I sprinted after them out of the haunted house. "We have to hurry," I said, feeling as though someone was trailing behind us. We dashed outside, feeling as if we had just escaped a nightmare. But when I glanced back, I saw the woman still standing in the doorway, smiling enigmatically. After leaving the festival, we sat down together to share what had happened. "We shouldn't go back to that house again," I advised. They agreed, and we decided to head home. In the days that followed, the memory of the festival and the haunted house lingered in my mind. The fear I felt kept me from returning to the festival the next year. A year later, the festival took place again. Despite my anxiety, curiosity compelled me to join Max and Sarah. Upon arriving, the festive atmosphere was still present, but the sense of apprehension washed over me once more. "Come on, it'll be fun," Max urged, a grin on his face. "I really don't want to. Remember last time?" I protested, feeling the old fears creeping back. But they were persistent, and eventually I relented. As we stepped inside, I immediately felt the change. The air was heavier, and the whispers echoed eerily around us. I turned back and saw that woman again, moving deeper into the shadows of the house. "Run!" I shouted, but Max and Sarah were captivated by the mysteries of the house. It felt as though I was trapped in a nightmare with no escape. Finally, I made the decision to flee. I dashed out of the haunted house, not caring whether Max and Sarah followed me. Once outside, I looked back, but saw only the cold, dark silhouette of the house. As I tried to find my way home, the images of the haunted house haunted me. I couldn't shake off the memories of what had happened, and the fear lingered on. Every summer, when the festival was held, I would think back to that night. My love for the festival had changed forever, and perhaps that was the most regrettable part, because I knew there were secrets hidden in the darkness of forgotten places, and one day they might return to find me.